Hey all, Tony Bing here. Hello and welcome to my Master Archer guide for Hawkeye. Now this is a nice simple build and it makes quite strong use of his trick arrow powers and it offers a whole lot of utility. Now on top of that, through our talent and gearing selection we can actually achieve really high crit and brute ratings, so we can put out a nice amount of damage as well. Now for the format in this video, what we will look at first is the skills. We follow up by checking out the talents, then have a look at the synergies. Next up we check out the first 100 infinity point allocation I would use, and then we look at the general gearing priority. Now finishing up at the end of the video we will have a run through of an operation with a full bounty clear, so we can show off single target and boss damage that he is able to do. Now I have actually placed timestamps within the description of this video, so if you want to jump to any particular section feel free to do that. Otherwise the first section we'll be having a look at will be the skills. For the skills here then, you actually have two slight variations in how you can work the rotation. You've got the lazy version, which is the one I prefer, which you just hit the skills every 8 seconds with the exception of your signature, or you have a version where you'll be mixing in 8 second and also 4 second cooldowns. Now with that version, a bit more complex to get, reason I'm not a fan of it, but some players will want to make the most out of the damage and that will allow you to do it. But one thing I'll mention about that as well is you may come across spirit issues because you will be spamming your skills a bit more often, so you may have to actually gear for spirit, so just do bear that in mind. But the first skill we look at is the main one that we'll be using as a filler, and that is Serrated Arrow. Now it doesn't actually spend any spirit at all, so do bear that in mind. If you're low in spirit from spamming the other skills, simply hold this one down, and as long as you're not spending spirit it will slowly start to generate, so that can really be quite useful there. But the first actual skill we look at for a rotation is Overwhelming Force. Now this is a great skill. It's on an 8 second cooldown. It fires off each of your trick arrows, so that means you get stun, slow and vulnerability, which is fantastic. Fires a shrieking arrow for taunt, and it fires a nerve gas arrow for your weaken as well. So it's really incredible. It's everything that this fires off, and it is every 8 seconds. Now you would follow this up with Free Arrow Burst. So with this again is firing lots of your trick arrows, freeze, electric, explosive. Now this has a 4 second cooldown, but the way I've got it set up is it actually has 2 charges. So for the lazy rotation, what I like to do is I will start off with Overwhelming Force and I apply all my different weakens and vulnerabilities and so on, and then I'll follow it up with the 2 charges of Free Arrow Burst that I've had the time to actually build up. Now the next skill we would use, this would be Rocket Arrow. So it does a nice amount of damage, 4 second cooldown, so this is one of the ones you can choose to use more often if you actually like. And on top of this it has a 100% chance to spend a trick arrowhead, and our previous skill, which is Free Arrow Burst, will generate 2 trick arrowheads for us. Now the second trick arrowhead that we generate, we can then use that through Boomerang Arrow here, and that's again got a 100% chance to spend a trick arrowhead if available. Now finishing up the rotation we have Speed Loader Volley, so it fires off 9 shots. While firing them off you will be slightly rooted, but you gain a 50% damage resistance, and this actually has an 8 second cooldown as well there. So again, as mentioned a few times already, this rotation can be as simple or as complex as you actually want. It's down to you, personal preference, and that's something I want to do in these guides, leave an element of the build down to your own choice. I don't want to dictate everything exactly how you do it. Now final skill we look at, fantastic signature, Stark Tech Claymore Turret. Works as a dot, 4 second duration, and it has that low 15 second cooldown, which is great. It's almost like a regular spammable skill with that cooldown, so love that a lot. But what we'll look at next anyway here is we will check out the talents. The first talent we look at here is a really simple one, but for me it's one of the best talents in the game. This is Can't Miss, and this offers a flat 10% critical hit chance, which is huge for arrow powers, and actually all the powers we use have that tag. So that really is incredible. Now, if you feel you're struggling for survivability or spirit, you can use muscle memory, which generates both of them when you activate a trick arrowhead effect. However, I would say try and use your gear to actually gain spirit restore or health instead, because you don't want to pass up a 10% flat critical hit chance. It really is incredible. But next up, talent wise, we have Make 'em Count. So with this, trick arrowheads effects deal 30% more damage, and also the actual trick arrow gain 100% damage. You'll generate 2 trick arrowheads upon firing a trick arrow, which we won't actually fire any, but it doesn't matter because the previous skill we looked at, the triple arrow, actually generates them for us, and it adds an 8-second cooldown to trick arrows. Again, doesn't matter because we're not using any of them. All the trick arrows are baked into our skills and we're gaining the 30% damage bonus on them, which works really well. Now next up, talent line 3, we have Extra Impact. So free arrow bursts generates 2 random trick arrowheads when activated, and it gains the 2 charges as well there. So that's very important because that is our only means to generate trick arrowheads, which are then used with the rocket and boomerang arrow, and from the previous talent gain the 30% buff. So hopefully, now I know it's a bit confusing in all this talk of arrowheads, but hopefully you can see it starting to come together a bit, the actual build we're going for. But next up, talent wise, we then have Streamline Model. Fantastic. This takes a whopping 20 seconds off your signature start tick claymore turret, pulls it down to 15 seconds. Now the dot is reduced from 6 seconds to 4, but it's still more than worthwhile. Now final talent before we look at the synergies is Overwhelming Force. So this will transform Wave of Arrows into Overwhelming Force. And that's the skill that was firing off all our trick arrows, Shrieking Arrow, and also Nerve Gas Arrow. So it's an incredible skill, it really is good. But next up, as mentioned, we will have a look at the synergies. For the synergies then, we always start off by making sure we have our primary attributes covered. So that would be Fighting and Intelligence. The 2 heroes that cover that would be Beast and War Machine. We then look at our more generic synergies that I like to use, and they include Blade, Hulk, Nova, She-Hulk, and also Squirrel Girl. And then finishing up, we select synergies that provide us with 2% ranged power damage. There's a few other heroes that actually offer this, but the 2 I'm using are Iron Man and Jean Grey. But you also have, off the top of my head, Black Widow and Punisher that also offer it as well. So there's quite a few options there. But next up, let's have a look at the first 100 infinity point allocation. For the allocation of the first 100 infinity points, then I've got a gem that may seem a bit strange, but there is rationale behind it. Now, I've currently placed the points into Superhuman, and this offers a 3.4% brutal strike chance. Now, the reason I'm going for that is Hawkeye has Fighting as a primary attribute, meaning he gains a crit rating multiplier, which means his crit rating can be pushed high. The higher crit rating you have, the more you want to get your brutal strike up as well, because you'll then have a higher chance for a brutal strike. Now on top of that, of course, when we looked at the talents, he had that 10% flat critical hit chance. So with Hawkeye, you can be looking at getting in the region for all his powers round about a 65% chance to critical hit when you're actually geared, maybe even potentially a bit higher than that. Now, so we have that brutal strike chance, which is great, but if we look at the power mastery, this is important as well for our build. So for 50 points, your ultimate power has a plus 20% critical hit chance, so that will be in the region of about 70-80%, and for 100 points, your signature power has 10% brutal strike chance and causes all enemies to be weakened for 10 seconds. And the great thing is that your signature, you'll be firing it off every 15 seconds. It gains a flat 10% critical strike or critical rating chance, and on top of that it also has that 10% brutal strike chance as well there. So we'll be seeing a whole lot of red numbers on it, which is what you want to see for your signature. But next up anyway, let's have a look at the gearing priority. As always then, when it comes to looking at the gear, I won't spell out everything exactly because there can be some variation depending on your own individual stats. But if we look at the legendary I would use, it would without a doubt be the Golden Bow of Apollo. You gain the damage rating to all our powers, the 10% attack speed, which is useful for our main filler skill. You have the 2 dots on rank 3 and 5, and then you have the 1500 critical hit rating to range powers. Now if you factor that in with the 10% flat critical rating from talents, the buff to crit rating we get through the fighting attribute, it means for your slots 1 to 5 you can actually look for attributes on quite a few of them, which puts your base damage rating even higher, which means once you crit and brute you'll be looking at even bigger numbers there. So for the artifacts, because we already have a lot of crit rating, you can concentrate on ones that are more geared towards the damage side of things, and of course keep an eye out for the fighting and intelligence attributes on them. Now next up we have the relic. Of course that would have to be the Relic of Xandar there, so provides the 500 damage rating to range powers. We then have the medallion. So for this one I would say a safe bet and medallion that shouldn't really change would be the Mandarin, because it buffs your range powers by a nice amount. Now something I don't normally show off, but I'll show off here to give you an idea, is if you're struggling for spirit on Hawkeye at all, you can go for the regenerate 25% of your health and 100 spirit when you use your med kit, or actually there's another affix which generates 5 spirit when you critically hit. So you've got that option. You can go for either of them if you feel you actually need that, and this solves any spirit issues you may have, allowing you to make sure you can use the talent that provides you with the 10% crit rating. Now for the part of the video you've all been looking forward to, I've now got the gameplay to actually show off the build. So we'll run through the abandoned subway operation, we will do a full bounty clear which will be take out 100 enemies, and then we'll face off against Shocker at the end. But as always with these videos, I hope it's been useful. If you have any questions or anything else, feel free to ask, and sit back and enjoy this gameplay.
Okay, that's impossible, even for me. Don't all congratulate me at once. Please, no more!